IU basketball had their media day on Friday, have plenty of quotes from Coach Mike Woodson, the players. We also have some men's and women's soccer update, and then we're going to get you set for some IU football action as we prepare for yet another top 10 matchup this weekend, which we certainly will have some thoughts on as well.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, guys? It is Monday, October 11th. This, as always, is Locked On Hoosiers. I'm your host, as always, Jacob Rude, bringing you daily updates and news on everything IU sports related. As I mentioned, we had Big Ten Media Day on Friday for IU for men's basketball. Certainly plenty to talk about there. First, I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen every day. Remember, Locked On Hoosiers is free and available on all platforms, as well as on YouTube at Locked On Hoosiers. We're going to talk about Big Ten Media Day, the notable stuff from Coach Woodson, from Trayce Jackson-Davis, from Race Thompson. We're going to talk about IU football and the schedule, which only seems to get harder with each passing week, and kind of the new look or new stat to come from the schedule on Sunday. And then we're going to wrap up with some men's and women's soccer update as they come off a big weekend and head into an even bigger week of action. Be sure you guys are subscribed to us on Twitter at @LO_Hoosiers. Followed, subscribed, same difference. Follow us on Instagram at Locked On Hoosiers. Subscribe to us on YouTube and wherever you guys get your podcasts. Big Ten Media Day came on Friday. As we mentioned on Friday's episode, it started on Thursday. We got some quotes from Juwan Howard, got those media preseason player of the year predictions or awards, first team, freshman of the year, all that stuff, standings predictions. You can go back and listen to Friday's episode to hear more about that. But we got quotes directly from Mike Woodson, Trayce Jackson-Davis, and whatnot. There was the kind of traditional interview or press conference that Mike Woodson did, where he talked to the entire media for not even 10 minutes. That was a very, I don't want to say boring, but just a very kind of basic, formulaic question and response. He didn't reveal much there. So that's available on video if you guys want to go watch it. I didn't think he revealed much. Honestly, the interview that I thought was the much better one is he was on the Big Ten Network's show that was live, and him, Trayce Jackson-Davis, Race Thompson were all there, and in 7 or 8 minutes, way more information came from that than from his interview in front of all the media and whatnot. So honestly, I'm going to reference that interview a lot more. If you guys want to go listen to the kind of traditional one, there's a transcript on IU's site. Like I said, not a ton of information there. A lot of answers that IU fans have already heard, that we've already discussed, that and just really kind of your general answers and whatnot. But when he was talking to Big Ten Network, he talked about the process with which he got the job. He said AD came up and talked to him in New York, where he was working as an assistant coach. And he said that Indiana was the only job he would leave the NBA for, which not surprising, but certainly interesting nonetheless. He said Scott Dolson came up and interviewed him. He made the pitch about how to turn Indiana around. He said he wanted to work with the players that they had, obviously improve on both ends of the floor. And he said about a week later, he got the job offer and accepted. So I just thought that was an interesting look. There hadn't really been a lot of talk about how he got the job. That was one of the first times I remember hearing him say that. It was also interesting to hear Trayce Jackson-Davis say that it's been a bit of a reset, he thought, with Indiana basketball. He mentioned it was when talking about Hoosier hysteria, the fans, having them in attendance. They were kind of joking with Mike Woodson about putting the candy stripes back on. And he said that Trayce Jackson-Davis said that it's been kind of a reset. They went almost 18 months without fans in attendance. So just that part alone at Assembly on Hoosier hysteria was nice. But you have fans coming back around. You have a new coach. You have a host of new players. And he said it's felt just like a reset, which I thought was interesting. Again, maybe not surprising when you go from one coach to another, but it's certainly interesting because it was a coaching tenure with Archie Miller that ended with nobody around, basically, with the fans not in attendance. It was an odd way to end it. It speaks volume about how loud the fan voice was on social media and the displeasure was with the few times fans were able to be in attendance, that it eventually led to him leaving. But he kind of left in silence, and Mike Woodson arrives. We've talked about him, this kind of being a homecoming of sorts for him. And that's what it's felt like. He seemed so comfortable in this position. And that was the other thing. Trayce Jackson-Davis just seemed really comfortable with where he is right now. Race Thompson was asked to describe the offense, and he said that they wanted to play fast, play together. But the interesting quote he gave was, quote, as long as we get to play defense, we get to have fun on offense, which Mike Woodson backed up and said his philosophy is you play hard on defense, you can go have fun and play fast on offense. And I enjoy that philosophy, and I think that's something the players will buy into, and it certainly seems like they've bought into it so far. Mike Woodson was talking about the team. He called Trayce Jackson-Davis a superstar, which is not the first time and won't be the last time he'll say that this season. Him, Trayce, Race Thompson were all asked to kind of single out guys that have stuck out, and honestly, just about everybody was named. Jordan Geronimo, Trey Galloway, Race was mentioned by Mike Woodson, Anthony Leo, Christian Lander, Rob Finnessy. A lot of guys were mentioned. Race said that people have put in more work this offseason than they've ever put in, which is telling about how much they bought into Mike Woodson's system, I think, more than anything else. Obviously, you could look at that in a different light and say maybe Archie wasn't getting everything out of them. I'm kind of putting that in the past. That they've bought in this quickly for Mike Woodson is a pleasant surprise, I guess. He also, Mike Woodson, revealed some of the details about what Thad Matta does, which I found to be an interesting kind of component of all this that we haven't really heard a lot about Thad Matta. His exact words were that Thad Matta works for the AD, which that's not surprising necessarily, but the quote Mike Woodson gave was that he's been, quote, very instrumental in giving me input on college basketball, which is kind of what we thought was going to be Thad Matta's role in all of this. He says that Coach Woodson said that he sits in all his coaching meetings, all his meetings, and they just talk basketball. So a little bit of insight into what Thad Matta is doing around the program. It seems like he was kind of a liaison between the coach Woodson as he learns college basketball and the athletic director, and just kind of help smooth that process from going from 30 plus years in the NBA to back to college basketball. And so far it seems like it's worked, and we'll certainly see what role that has. They also talked about bringing Dane Fife back and the importance of that. Coach Woodson not only said it was important to bring him back to Bloomington, but it was important to get somebody who's worked under Tom Izzo for all this time, which is maybe an underrated aspect of his hiring, is you're bringing in somebody that's worked with one of the greatest coaches in college basketball history. So a lot of value to that as well. So really interesting quotes from Big Ten Media Day, specifically from that interview with the Big Ten Network. There were various stories that were done. Dustin Doporiak had one for the Herald Times that was really good on Rob Finnessy and how important he is going to be, he needs to be, this season and how big of a season it will be for him personally. So a lot of interesting stuff to come from Big Ten Media Day, as we're under a month away from the start of men's basketball play, as we will start kind of ramping up basketball coverage as we try to juggle everything. There's going to be a couple weeks here where we have football, basketball, soccer, everything. We'll try to juggle it all, but certainly excited for the basketball season to start to get underway. But what is already underway is the men's football season. We had a break, a reprieve from football this weekend for IU fans to kind of also hit a reset button, but it didn't get any easier this weekend for IU football. So we will discuss why the new polls make things even tougher for Indiana this year, and then take a look at some of the action around the Big Ten this weekend. For those of you that are into betting like myself, you could have taken part in PrizePicks this weekend, who is the daily leader in college fantasy sports. PrizePicks offers more college props than anyone in the world and offers all the star players of the Power Fives. They offer people on mid-majors you probably haven't even heard of. They do everything from touchdowns to passing yards to interceptions thrown, anything you could possibly imagine. Everybody who signs up today using promo code LOCKEDON will receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. They're giving you free money, guys. PrizePicks allows mixed sports entries. You simply pick 2 to 5 props, take the over-under, and win up to 10 times your entry. Don't hesitate. Check out PrizePicks.com. Use promo code LOCKEDON. Or go to the App Store, download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports made easy. So the updated top 25 comes out on Sunday. And if you were thinking it was going to get any easier for IU this season, I have some other news for you. So Iowa moves up to number 2, Cincinnati number 3 with the Alabama loss. Penn State drops to 7. Michigan State is up to number 10, and you have Ohio State at 6 and Michigan at 8. Now, for those that were astute and kind of paying attention, that means there are now 6 top 10 opponents on the schedule for IU football. Again, 60% of the top 10 is on IU's schedule. That is absurd. I posed the question to our Locked On College kind of group chat that we have, if this has ever happened before. I would imagine if it has happened before, it would have happened in the SEC. The closest kind of similar thing I got is that Texas A&M played the number 1 ranked team in the country on 3 different occasions in 2019, which again is very absurd and equally right up there with what Indiana is going to do. But I can't specifically remember an instance where a team has potentially faced 3 top 10 I wish it was only 3, 6 top 10 opponents in the same season. Now, obviously, Ohio State and Michigan could still lose before the Hoosiers play them, but they're guaranteed at least 4, with number 10 Michigan State coming in this season or this week. So it's going to be an absolutely absurd schedule. It continues to raise the question about how much of IU's struggles are their own struggles and how much is it the fact that they're playing one of the most brutal schedules I can remember. SP Plus, who we reference weekly here, still has Indiana as the toughest schedule in the nation across the entire schedule. Nebraska is number 2 and Penn State's number 3, but it's maybe a little bit of kind of karma or payback from last season. Ultimately, last year, IU had a pretty easy schedule. A lot of the blue bloods and the power teams, they were down last season. Your Penn States, your Michigans, your Michigan States. IU 1,000% took advantage of that and won those games and had one of the best seasons in generations, certainly of my lifetime and of many of you guys' lifetimes. There might be some payback, some karma for that, as they now have what has definitely been the toughest schedule in my lifetime. I assume in a lot of your lifetimes. and it could potentially get even worse. So it's not a fun time to be an IU football fan. Looking forward to this schedule. That being said, I'm optimistic about what IU can do with some of these remaining games left, because I watched a fair amount of Big Ten football this weekend. Wasn't overly impressed. I obviously spent a good chunk of time watching that Iowa Penn State game. We advise you to take Iowa with our BetOnline picks. As I said last weekend, I'm really good at making advice and not taking my advice. I advise you to take Iowa. I did not take Iowa. But Iowa comes away with the victory after Sean Clifford goes down in the first half. Taquan Roberson comes in and for Penn State at quarterback, struggled mightily. And Iowa kind of had their way with him. He finished 7 of 21 with 2 interceptions. And Iowa did just enough against that defense. The big touchdown play late to go up and see this game out. They scored 10 points in the fourth quarter to come from behind and earn the win. So memorable victory for Iowa. I think at this point, those are the two best teams in the conference, and Iowa is now a real player in the not just the Big Ten title race picture, but in the conference playoff picture. I would not be surprised if these two teams meet again for the Big Ten title in about a month's time or so. Watched a little bit of Michigan State Rutgers. Rutgers jumped out to an early lead. I was kind of impressed / optimistic about IU's chances against Michigan State. Michigan State bounced back and ended up winning it fairly easily, but looked vulnerable. I think there's some reasons for some optimism if IU can fix some things offensively during this bye week. I think there's some reason for optimism against Michigan State. Also, Rutgers is not the Rutgers of old, and they have some talent with Cruikshank is a really dynamic offensive option. It'll be interesting to see. Noah Vedral was really good for them, both passing and running the ball. So they won't be the rollover they've been. Who will be a rollover as we get more and more into it? Maryland is absolutely struggling right now. They lose 66-17 to Ohio State. CJ Stroud looks incredible. I think he's shaking off some of that some of that early season. I don't want to call it rust, but maybe growing pains. Although I think at this point, anybody's going to look really good against Maryland. IU will certainly put that to the test in a couple of weeks. And then Michigan barely survives against Nebraska. Nebraska gave that game away late. Adrian Martinez played one of the best games of his life, throws for 291 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. Cade McNamara did not play well, but Hassan Haskins did, running the ball. And Michigan gets a late field goal after a Nebraska turnover to honestly steal that game. I thought Nebraska really gave that one away. So some reason for optimism for the Hoosiers for their next couple of games coming up, but they have a lot of problems of their own that they need to fix before we start worrying about any other teams and how they may shape up against the Hoosiers. As long as Indiana plays the way it did against Penn State, they're not going to be anybody of note. Let's talk about some other football, as we mentioned, with both men's and women's soccer picking up victories. Before that, though, Built Bar has a limited time flavor you guys need to hear about. Cookie dough chunk. The only thing that can get me to not eat the cookies and cream bar is a cookie dough bar, and it is absolutely delicious. If that's not the flavor you guys want, they have your traditionals, your coconuts, your cherries, your peanut butter brownies, your salted caramels, all sorts of flavors for you guys to try. But they're not only tasty, they're healthy as well. You're looking at 17 to 18 grams of protein, 130 to 180 calories, 4 to 5 grams of both sugar and net carbs. So you got some amazing flavors. They're tasty, they're healthy. No reason not to head on over to builtbar.com. Use promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off. That's builtbar.com, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your order today. Men's soccer team had a get-right game, so to speak, against Trine, who not a Division I program. The Trine Thunder came in. I believe they were playing their second ever game against a Division I team. They looked like a team playing their second ever game against a Division I team. They are a Division III school who I would assume this game was scheduled by IU for the very purpose it ended up serving. Indiana scored in boatloads from the the 9th minute until the 45th minute. So 36 minutes of action, they scored 8 goals. They were scoring goals so quickly that you could barely keep up. Basically, Victor Becerra scored the first one he had 2 on the day. Samuel Sarver had a goal. Tommy Mahalik had a goal. The 2 freshmen continue to shine. And then a whole bunch of guys. Sarver got a second later. Herbert Endley got a goal. Joe Schmidt converted a penalty. Daniel Mooney had another goal assisted by Becerra. And then Ryan Wittenbrink had the final goal in the second half, the 61st minute, 9-0 beatdown by Indiana. Again, that was a game that they needed. They needed to kind of get some of that confidence, some of that swagger back. Hopefully it's there now because they have a big game coming up this week. Tuesday, they play at home against Ohio State, the last of their 4-game homestand, and it will be on Big Ten Network at 7 o'clock. As we said last week when we talked about where the Hoosiers stand in the Big Ten Conference, every game is a must-win at this point in the Big Ten, and they're going to need some help as well to win at least a share of the Big Ten Conference title, the regular season title. So every Big Ten game is important. You guys will have a chance to watch them on Tuesday when they take on Ohio State. Women's soccer team continues flying high. They pick up a win on Friday against Northwestern, 1-0. That defense remaining stout as ever. Megan Wampler gets the goal in the 43rd minute, assist by Olivia Wass. The Hoosiers have not allowed a goal each of the last 2 games now, Big Ten games, coming off a 1-1 draw with Ohio State. It's an impressive run that they're on right now. And after those big draws against Ohio State and Michigan, 2 of the top teams in the conference, they come back with this win on the road against Northwestern. Impressive victory. Again, another team who has a big conference game this week against a Penn State team that was receiving votes in the last poll in the poll last Monday. They will play them Wednesday at 7 o'clock as well on ESPNU. So you'll have a chance to watch both the men's and women's soccer team this week. The men play Ohio State on Tuesday at 7 o'clock on the Big Ten Network. The women play Penn State at Wednesday at 7 o'clock on ESPNU. So 2 chances to tune in to 2 soccer teams that are one, the men's team has a lot of expectations, a lot of talent as they look to get things right, and a women's team that is flying high right now. So no excuse not to see both teams this week. I know I will be tuning into both of those games, excited to see both teams in action this week. We'll have Jared on for a regular pod on Tuesday, and then hopefully be able to do a crossover show this week with Michigan State, Locked On Spartans, to preview that Big Ten matchup, get a sense for what the Hoosiers have in store for them this week. It's going to be an exciting week as we gear back up for some football. Hopefully you guys were able to reset as I was and get excited about football again. Starting to talk myself back into them winning on Saturday. As always, be sure to leave a rating and review. I will read the reviews on air if you guys leave them. So if you have any questions, anything you guys want to talk about, leave a rating and a review, and I will get to that for you guys. Thanks, as always, for making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen every day. We'll be back tomorrow with Jared. Maybe talk some about that IU defense. I said I would table that for this week. Also have an NBA season coming up that Jared and I might talk about as well. So for your second listen, head on over to the Locked On Big Ten Network with Nate Dickinson. Follow us on Twitter, subscribe wherever you guys listen to your favorite podcasts. Most importantly, have a great Monday, guys, in LEO.